And we are live. Hello there. Welcome. BLS011. Show and tell with OKRUSHKO. Hello there, Alex.
Hey, woo!
It's awesome to have you here. Second time online. Last week, BLS010, we talked about component store. You walked me through how to use this amazing piece of equipment you introduced us to.
Tool in your toolbox, right?
Totally. And I started using it directly. I really like it. It really cleans up my code quite a bit. I don't think I've encountered any of the race conditions that it prevents me from, but this also might be my users just not telling me like, hey, thing doesn't update when I like to. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Glad that you are using it, and even if you're not encountering the race conditions that or eliminated any race conditions yet with it, it's still, you're still now very specific about how you would handle them should you have any. Hey, Freddie.
Totally. Yeah. Hey, Freddie. Yeah, Freddie told us on Twitter yesterday that he loves component store as well, and
Nice.
It's cool to see you here.
Yeah, I had a webinar yesterday as part of the NG Poland. It was supposed to be a 2-hour webinar. Basically general. I wanted to expand this a little bit, and that was in general about components and reactivity and state in general. It ended up being 2.5 hours. I still had some material to show. Yeah. They can upload that soon as well, and I really love how it turned out. So yeah, there's a shameless plug right there, right in the beginning.
Awesome, love it. This is the shameless plug channel. BLS is shameless by default. So cool. Yeah, I think we can dive right into it. Let me quickly bring up the app. So the thing we are working on is an app that I'm building, which is called Connect the Mind. It's a multi-tenant app where we can manage communities. So you can have various communities. This is all sample data because I'm not live yet. And last week we looked at the email section. So there's an email section where you can like add emails.
Does it work? Does it work?
It works. Yeah, it works.
Nice.
It works great. And I think what I like most about this is the next thing. Let me quickly open up the shared email list component.
Did you want to look at the optimistic stuff as well, or I don't remember if you wanted to look at
that?
Yeah,
well, we can definitely look at that, and I think I think I called it emails store. Yeah, there you go. Here it is, account emails. So this is what I like most about it. This is what my component class looks like. Isn't this pretty?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and
super
cool.
simple.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, and then, well, let's quickly dive into the component store. This is what we did last week. So we had a state where we store the emails. We have a loading property, so we can show that in the UI. What I think the biggest takeaway for me is that you define a view model, VM $, where you basically expose stuff from the store. The rest can all be considered private or internal.
And then, what's interesting here as well is, see, like right now we just basically exported both properties, and that happens too, right? You basically expose the entire state, but sometimes you might want to transform it in the meantime or expose some of it. Some could be internal to the component store. Yeah, so just wanted to call that out.
Yep. No, totally. And you can be selective in this. This was also the first thing that I was like, doesn't work. When I tried to implement it somewhere, and it was like, I didn't expose it in the view model. So this was kind of a takeaway for myself there. Then in the actual template where we use it, first thing, outer element in our template is an ng container with the VM $ async as VM. And as of that, you do very nice VM.emails, VM.loading. So next to being a clean solution, I really like that I have some convention to go about how to name stuff and how to use it. So I've been interested in, I've been working with this. We created an effect for add email. We created an effect for delete email. and for getting the emails and setting the primary email. Basically, all of our common actions. One thing we didn't handle was errors. So I got some to-do statements here. So that's something we might want to look into. And I want to quickly run you by what I've tried to do myself. So let me see. If I go here, I should be able to go, yes, manage community. This is my other app. This is running in an NX workspace. So I have two apps that have more or less the same stuff. For this project, I'm working on a simple contact management system. Or that's even just contact list. We want to have a contact. We want to create groups and add contacts to this. And I started implementing this with NgRx component store, because when you have a new tool, you directly want to use it. This is, I think, a pretty common master detail view where this list is being rendered and then these people are taken from the groups. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you during last week was how to fetch stuff from the router, but then I started thinking like Alex probably has an example. So I started looking in your repo, in your GitHub, and I found from somewhere in April, component store examples. So this was super useful.
Okay. I don't remember that one. It's nice.
You had books, the bookstore, I think. You had a bookstore that you
Okay,
with
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was like very early ones. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, but it looks like the UI or how to use it stayed the same. So
okay, yes, I see. So one thing about this one is actually I love as you touched on this point. So for any of the routers, params, and all that stuff, what I prefer is to use the global store. The reason why, is router is truly global. It's used entirely throughout the entire application. Yeah. And moreover, you have the NgRx store router package that basically already has all the reducers and everything else for you, all and exposes you just as selectors. Yeah. It's basically zero effort, all well tested, all well covered, and you can have your reactive router state anywhere you need with like zero cost, zero time to write it even, right? So yeah, this is what I typically recommend to do. And it's up to you, of course, if you want to do it or not, or you like handling all those router navigation and events and other things. And
no, I'd rather not. But it's one of those things where I think I see myself transitioning from using NgRx more, thanks to also having you as a doing your workshop in Atlanta earlier this year. And there's just like, first of all, there's a ton of code that's not written that way. I think I'm well prepared to move towards it, but I really lack some structure and some experience on how to do it. And okay, so this is interesting. You say, if there's routing involved, can I globalize it this way? If it's routing involved, you're probably looking to the global store instead of component store.
Yes, and that basically enables you to start using the global store for whatever things you might need in the future as well. Because otherwise you might be hesitant. Hey, it's like I kind of have already everything in the component stores, and I have one particular state that feels like it's global and probably could be really used everywhere, and it's like not one thing but maybe a little bit more things, and you are hesitant to bring the global store because like you have the rest as component stores. Yeah, but you can start with the router, because router almost everybody would have it, right? And it's so easy to integrate it with the component store. It's like super simple, right? So you could, and especially the routing, like that one's completely covered. You wanted to read URL after redirect property, or like any like those even niche ones, right? It's all covered. Yeah, it's all good there. Yeah, and it's all well tested. You don't have to write any reducers if you don't like the global state reducers. No, it's there. And again, the router store package, it's fairly small. It's basically like 3 or 4 files together. Basically the reducer, and it's very easy to bring it in as well. So I would use it for myself, but again, it's definitely up to you.
No, but I totally, I'm totally taking your lead here, or following your lead here. In any case, I try to hack it in or do it in any ways. I thought it was pretty clean because it turns out, I think this is assumption area, because I provide this router store in its component right here. If I inject activated route here in the constructor, it works. So this was a nice, easy thing, and this is a pattern I saw you used in your example with the bookstore. And then I was like, but from here on out, it's pretty much common area, common territory, where I already know what I've been doing in the past. Taking the community name. So I mean, to visualize it a little bit, this is the name.
One thing that I would do there, if you could get there for a second, it'll be a quick fix. So I would instead, you have a router param thing that you pipe and you map. So let's do the experiment there, line 25. So instead, just before the router param, do this select and select from the router param. Yeah.
So
this dot select.
This dot select.
Yeah. And so router param is the first argument. Router param is the first argument. So you put the comma after param map. Yeah. Router param map. Yes. Sorry. And the second argument would be basically what you have in your map function right now. So you
have in the map function.
Remove the.
Yeah.
Yes. So this one. Yes. Exactly. That. Yep. Perfect. And now you can delete the pipe. So you basically changed nothing. However, now router param is something that select is listening for. It will unsubscribe from it when you destroy the component. So you just automatically brought the unsubscriptions to it. So it's not leaking the data, right? Because otherwise it would have, because you would have to take until somehow. So this one already does it. Secondly, it now listens for the param map and it won't emit it if nothing's changing there. So it's a and moreover, if the community name doesn't change, it won't emit anything as well. So you basically just brought all the performance and a subscription with literally not changing much.
And I think it's even shorter.
It's roughly the same.
Yeah, it's roughly the same. Yeah, but no, I love this. So is it correct that this select is more or less a generic form to handle observables and pipes, like the common pattern we do?
In a select, if you don't provide an observable to the select, it basically you need to get from the state and transform the state. However, if you provide observables to it as a first argument, a second, or third, the projector function here now becomes like a global selector projection. So it'll take whenever the values are emitted, it'll be passed into that projector function as they go. So this is a brief one. There's an extra configuration that could help in some cases. I need to say you probably don't care about this one at this stage. There's also config to debounce it or not.
Is that a third parameter?
Exactly. So this is the last that config. So that config typically could be useful in actually view models. It lets the entire state settle before it emits the value. So if you can think of it, when you combine values from multiple observables, like if it's one, it doesn't really matter, right? Well, almost doesn't matter, right? But if you have multiple observables and you aggregate the result from it, say with combined latest, right? And you probably know it, that even if the source is the same for each of those observables, for example, there's a subject somewhere underlying, and they all emit roughly at the same time, like not roughly, but like exactly at the same time. Combined latest will still emit multiple values because each observable is changing value, right? And this is what would be mapped. This is what would be recalculated. This is all the extra stuff, and moreover, your selector would also emit all of those things. This is where the bounds true really shines, because now it's like, okay, we're changing those things underneath, but it won't calculate them at once. It it pushes it into the next micro task. So that the one that happens right after all the synchronous stuff happens, it will then recalculate it. So it defers this calculation just a bit, but it defers it still before the entire change detection runs. So it's a win-win-win situation. However, sometimes it could be a little bit unexpected results because, especially during testing, you're like, oh, I check push this value, or I want to verify that it's there, and it's not there because, well, you need to run like trigger micro task or flash macro tasks,
Right.
whatever stuff it is. Yeah. So
interesting.
Yes, this is just like a little bit of a topic.
No,
I typically don't just show this when I talk about component storage. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but this is like one of the cool things that are even makes performance even better.
Yeah. No, I really like it. And I think these kind of nuggets are exactly the reason to invite somebody who built it, because before you find this out, you probably scratched your head quite a few times, like how to solve this.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point you're like, hey, they thought about it. They added a debounce property. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's lovely.
yeah. You
wanna,
can scratch it for now. Yeah.
Yeah. Quickly answer Freddie's question. Can I init the state in the component store? I thought it was something we should do from the component.
Yeah, so you can do it, and this is what you do here in the super.
Right.
You provide the default state, but you can also defer it for later if you want to. So component store has a property called has a method called set state, and set state again is interesting because if you call set state and you pass the callback, so if somewhere in the constructor you will just type this set state. So after community name, somewhere.
This set state.
Yeah, set state. Yeah. So see, even the property there. So now see, it wants you to pass the groups and loading. Yes. So this is now you initialize the state. Loading is, I think, optional. Oh, groups are optional. Yes. So this now initializes the state. However, set state can also take a callback, right? So it can be state exactly. So you can use some of the things within there if you want to. This is not initializing the state. This is adjusting the state, right? So, and internally, I track really hard if the state was initialized or not. The reason why I track it hard is because your updaters, or even like right now, the state you're using where the callback is, you are already relying that the state interface is fulfilled, right? So you rely that whatever some initial state it is. If you scroll above to show us what the contact group state is, you see loading here is not an optional. Loading is there. Yeah. So if you are building off it and all of a sudden you're loading as undefined, right? You really don't want that to happen. So initially I was kind of thinking, do I want to lazy state or not at all, right? Or maybe I wanted to have a behavior subject which has always initial state beneath to begin with. But then we got back thinking a little bit more, and I put the replay subject of one internally that allows you to defer initialization to maybe a little bit later. So I don't think it will be frequently used. I think a lot of times the super, especially with all the loading stuff, it would be there. But you can defer it. You can defer it 100%. So now you can just, set state. You can remove that one.
Awesome. Great question, Freddie, by the way. This is probably one of the common patterns, and probably also like a little nugget like, I can just call super on the constructor and it's there already. So this is kind of nice to know. When I was experimenting with the router in particular, I figured that I could also pass it in here if I would like. So that the place where I actually invoke my get contact groups, this would be another thing, but it felt kind of like, but now I'm relying on injecting my activated route again. It's just more work in the component. Let's get it.
100% remove all the activated route outside for sure. Like this is why we have these stores that are really attached to this component, that they do all the heavy lifting, they track all the stuff. Here we're just like, hey, send a signal, get the contact group, that's it, whatever. Get the VM back.
Yeah, no, love it. So one of the things here that I was experimenting with, so what I would like to achieve, if you go here to create group and add a new group and create it here, it gets updated. Wow, okay, wait. I didn't prepare this specific tag. I thought it wouldn't. Okay, so to give you all an idea, the area here, the cards that we see in the middle, which has the title of the group and it says like we don't have any contacts, this is a router outlet. And this create group is just a route. We can see URL, goes contacts/create, and then adds it here. And
one more quick one. Freddie, the resolvers and routing, I don't use resolvers. I don't use resolvers. I think they're really... okay, I'll put it this way. I don't use resolvers. They're UI blocking. They do a lot of things. I'd rather have my component reach it, and then the component handle, oh, I have the data or I don't have the data. So I let component do that. I don't get the routing involved in this. I feel like a messy business. Guards, I use guards, but I only use them like if the user should really not get to that component anyhow, right? And maybe redirect somewhere else. So that's the good use of guards, but resolvers, not so much.
I've been using resolvers quite a bit in the past. I think the AngularJS UI router had a very similar pattern. I basically copied it over. I like to have the momentum. Like you can be sure that something is loaded there. I always was messing around with, okay, but now I got, like, for instance, take this one where you have a list of groups. And then now I'm stuck because I want to refresh the group. And now I basically have to do the exact same work I did in Resolver, and I have to do it here. And this is what I was like, okay, I might want to do another, I might take another approach. And also one of the things that have become more popular is basically the placeholder cards with their moving SVGs that are like your loading indicator that the popular social networks all use. This is something that's not possible if you wait for this route to happen. And so this is something where I'm moving away from them. I found one use case that I thought was super nice was being the trigger, as you like to call it, the trigger of I'm going to this route, load the stuff in. But I've realized that you just do it in the ng on init.
Or the component, or even in the component constructor,
or even in the constructor in some case, and so that would basically this trigger load the thing I'm working with, basically load your state.
The blank state is basically your loading state then, right? So
exactly.
So let the user know something is happening instead of just blocking the rendering. But again, I mean, it all depends on how you want your app to be UI, like user-friendly and all that as well.
Right. And I think, Freddie says, I use them to prevent the blank state while the request to get data happens after the component loads. I think this is the most common pattern. This is probably how it's being sold, to put it that way. Like, oh, this is what you want to do if you want to make sure something happens. But I've seen myself using them less and less, and I think I'd even use them less frequently with this new component store. So cool. I wanted to take a look at how that worked, but it magically worked. I think I did something wrong while I was developing this, but hey, I'm not sure. This is the magic land of code. And so just to take a quick look, this is the create method right here. And then we go into this component. And what I do here, this is the create component, and this is routed into, but it's still a child of the component store that we use outside, right?
Okay, so if it's a routed child, it would still find the component store upstream and inject that instance. And moreover, one cool thing is even the component projection. So when you have a component that uses a custom the other component, and within that component you put some other component as well, the content projection thing. The inner component would have access to the component store from the from the outside. So although they both look like they're not siblings because one is the inside the content projection of the outer one, but they have access to that internal component store, which is like super cool things, and basically enables you. Basically, the injector hierarchy, the way it goes and finds instances, is really amazing.
Love it. Yeah, and this is, I think, I've seen this in, I think I'm not sure who gave the talk, NgConnect 2 years ago. Some talk like 5 things you didn't know about services in Angular, and one of them was these. Like one of them was, we already mentioned you can provide a service in their components. I was like, wow, this is cool. Never realized they basically. It rains down on all the children, and you can take a hold of them. And I was like, mine is blown. But then again, I also think if you have to then, with that knowledge, if you then have to reorchestrate and think about how you use stuff, it's hard to find your own solution to do this right. And I think something like Component Store and having the one of the co-creators explain how it works really helps to drive home like, okay, but this is how it is. Look at this component. This is a smart component, right? This is an intelligent component. It's not even that intelligent. It's 20 lines. And I can get rid of the selector because it's routed. So it's a 20-line component, and it does all this magic. And I'm blown away, literally.
Yeah,
I really.
I don't rush now to separate the presentational components out too much, unless I really see a potential of it to be reused and stuff like that. Because it works, right? I could have split it up into the presentational and smart component, but like, why bother, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, we can take a look at the form itself is tiny as well, and this is because I use form abstraction. Like I still probably would keep it separated, and if at the moment that I get to editing groups, I'll change this create contact group to save contact group, and I have a generic like, okay, you can pass in an existing one, or you can use it to create a new one. Basically vary on that one. But yeah, I totally hear you. If you have a component that's as tiny as this, why bother even splitting it out more? Because this is already super lean.
Yeah. So again, although last time when we were using the that list where you had 3 other components, that was perfect. You have those presentational components that are outside because there's like 3 of them. Remember? That was the perfect split. I found those a great balance to have those components really to be presentational because they're like 3 components that you were using in a template. That was it. Yes.
So that was, I think, this one. So we have the email list here, and I would probably, and this is something just doing the card itself, I would probably stuff into the email list as well, because now it's kind of weird that you have like this layout thing, which is the card. It's like, nah, you might as well.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. Love it. First, it depends today, but yeah. No, but yeah, I totally agree. And this is, I think, for a lot of apps, it's a more common pattern where you have like various things on your page that you want to render. Think, for instance, Firebase console. Authentication page where you have like a section above where you have your authentications. Each you click open, you have another relatively intelligent piece of work there. You scroll down and you have even more. So yeah, okay, love it. Yeah, so this was one question I had, but it's kind of a moot point because it just worked. I guess I just didn't check it right, or I forgot that I fixed it. I frankly don't know, but okay.
Yeah, cool. It's how the injector hierarchy in Angular works, right? It tries to find if you inject something in it, and then it starts going up the tree, up the component. So it's not exactly the components tree, right? Because there's injector tree, which is a little bit similar, but it's a little bit different, right? That's how it finds the content projected ones as well, right? So it also goes up the tree and finds it, or it will complain you that, hey, I couldn't find it, what it was, or let me see, it might, because if you're not injecting it, this is important. That's why it's important to have the injectable and not provide anything in there, because if you provide a root, it'll just instantiate it, right?
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, awesome. So yeah, we took a look at how we did it last week, and I basically rinsed and repeated, made it a bit more complicated with the routed parameters or with the routed components, but it all magically worked, and I nicely abstracted it. At some point, I'm going to test this. I promise you all. And I do of these demos. So where I have this small page, the 3-page layout, and this routed thing. Now, there's another pattern I think is pretty common, and I would love to take a look at you with how you would suggest fixing this. So in my apps, I have an icon up here where my user is rendered, and I have some items here. And at this moment, they're not, but at some moment, this will, if I'm an admin, show other links than when I'm not an admin. This is one challenge. So it has like personalized data. By the way, this only renders when you're logged in. So we can consider we don't have to take care about logged out state. The only logged out state here is your login screen, right? So we can consider you being logged in. Previously, I was using a token to authenticate my requests, and I stored this token in the NgRx store. And then Lars came on my show, and he was like, meh, bad practice, use cookies. Also, Chow mentioned it on my show, and I got called out on Twitter like, hey, dude, you should just use cookies. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I moved back to using cookies. I used cookies 10 years ago, but I somehow moved to token. Thought that was a great idea, but no. So that's that. So before I used NgRx like global store to store this stuff. So I had a user object and a token object, and now I don't need token anymore. So I got rid of the token, but I still have my user here, and this is kind of the thing I'm getting used to. And then at any point where I need it, I basically call, I think it's called get auth user. Yeah, I just say, hey, this store select get auth user and put in my selector. Now this all works, but I'm generally interested in how you think what you think is the best way to solve this. Just your opinion. What how would you treat this thing? Maybe it changed with now that we have component store. Maybe it's still the same global store. Maybe it's not even store. What's your take?
So how would you determine which links user sees? Is it basically built into the UI? Or do you request it from the backend?
Right now, it's all front-end stuff. So based on your role that you get from the backend, the user has an admin property. The user has a role property. It's either admin or user. If you're admin, we will show different stuff in the future.
I see you have the user links selector.
So what I did, so here's the thing. I started hacking around, and this is a good thing that I know you'll be on my show like in a week, so I can just start experimenting with stuff and like, okay, I'm gonna ask Alex how it's properly done. So we have these two apps here. Let me take this local dot connect to mind. So these ones share the same top level navigation bar. This is the same thing. So I got the same thing. And then I was like, okay, I want to share these links, this set of links. I'd like them to be the same across these two apps. I like the header bar to be dynamic. So here, for instance, you see when I go into a community, you get this link manage community that takes you to the admin part of this specific community. So here I was, and then I was like, okay, at this moment, I know I have a store called Auth store. This is my authentication store that I used to use for my user and token. I've started abusing it and started adding my links there as well. And we can take a look at it. Auth reducer. Here you go. So I got a store. Oh, this O doesn't sound really promising. I basically more or less hacked it in, made it work, and then I think we have a nice use case to look with you, like how would you actually do this?
So properly? your links are part of the state.
For now, they are, but ideally, I'd have them out.
Do you ever change them?
No, these are generally these are hard coded. So this is all your account management stuff.
Yeah. So this is part of your selector then.
Okay.
So your selector, you'll be relying on the user we discussed it, right? Permissions in theory.
Yeah.
For now, you have roles, right? Or you still, and then based on those, you'll just provide different values for your. So you'll still have a selector for the links.
Yeah.
Which you call user. Yes. But here instead you won't be using for links. You'll be using looking for the user permission, or what is it? User state. And based on those, return different sets. So what do you have now? You probably have it as a part of a reducer.
Well, I just set them here in the initial state, and I'd never even changed them. So this was already a smelly thing. Like this doesn't even belong in the state. It shouldn't be probably be a property.
It doesn't change. Huh?
Yeah, it doesn't change exactly. But I like the idea where you say it's part of your selector, and I like it because I think it's a fairly easy refactor, because it would be something like this. Then get user auth links. You can say, okay, just give me back whatever is in links.
Except for you say those links change based on what the user is, right?
And then we can say state.user. Okay, so let me see what I should probably do here is pass in the role, maybe.
You can do it there, or you can do it in the user links itself. Like you can make this one just static const links. Yeah, and here based on this would be a function that does things. Yeah.
So
I
eventually want to return links.
Yes, the different ones, right? Yeah, okay. But based on the user, right?
So we say this.user.role.
Nope.
So this is
just one thing. So you don't want this selector to be triggered if state changes. You want to only trigger if user changes. So in your create selector, instead of get auth state, just get the user state. Got auth user. Get auth user. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's already a great thing. So we just get the user back.
So now it's a user. Yeah. And now we build on top of that. Now it's a user role. Yes. So instead of state, we just user role.
So, okay, perfect. So we have a user. So we can at some point, if it were, for instance, a ternary, should say user.role is role.admin. Do this or do that, right?
Yeah.
This would be a possibility. And then I think so this would be destructure these links in here, destructure these links in, and then I could basically prefix this with my admin links.
Yeah. And ideally, I remember that the roles is one thing, but permissions is different. You could have had a permission for a specific link, and then you'll just go through that array based on the permission that has that. You can just pick those as well. So, but again, you're currently sticking with roles, which is what it is, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. There's global role. This is your global role. If you're a system admin, you can do anything in the system. But there's in the community, we have a more fine-grained system. And we mentioned this briefly last week. I started implementing this. So we now, if you go to an actual role, so this is probably a more interesting one. You can now see a leader has several permissions. They can do basically any operation, and a member only has the right operations. This is not totally true to the reality, but at least I got the setup here so that we can do more fine-grained access control. And this is one of the things in the front end where I want to check if you don't have the review mission permission, you should not see this link. So this is probably more towards where we're heading. Like you have a fine-grained set of controls. A user has an array of permissions they can do, and the way I go about it, probably each of these links then has a reference to whatever relation they require.
And the thing is with the permissions, then I would have maybe put it in the global store or a global component store, the permissions, and this is where you would transfer, it will read the user and all the other stuff, and it'll just expose you the permissions, right? The permissions that a user has. And then when you need, say, links, for example, it says, hey, link needs this permission. Is this permission in the set of permissions that user has. If it does, put it in. So this is basically what I would have ended up doing.
Awesome. Yeah. Yes. And so, okay, cool. I build it in the global store. If you would start this app from scratch, and if I would start it from scratch, you would advise me how to treat this specific, like, okay, get the icon here and get the links in here. Do you have a fixed answer for that, or is it it depends?
No, I mean what you're doing is kind of fine, right? So it's fine to do this, and it's fine to do it even through the global store. There's no problem because, well, you need it. You might need it somewhere else as well, and you need user information in different places. That's completely fine. It's completely global information.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I think I agree, and that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and refactor this and make it sure that my links are there. And I'm also going to go ahead and get these permissions in. So next time next time I can show around like, hey, this is how I solved the nice mission menu. By the way, I'm not sure if you can see the coincidence, but I'm a shameless stealer. You know where this sidebar is inspired from?
Oh, yes. If there looks like Firebase console.
Yes. It probably doesn't cover a whole bunch of edge cases that you guys have in there, but yeah, I really like your sidebar, and I've blatantly copied it. It's available somewhere in my GitHub. It's open source. You can go find it. It's implemented with Bootstrap. In any case, so cool. Okay, so I'm happy that I'm on track with this one. Also means I don't have to refactor a whole bunch of stuff. Another common thing I think a lot of people have, and I never realized using state for it until somebody told me, is having toasts in state. So here you see doing the toast, primary email updated. Right now, so this is a project that has a bit of a pressure, so I'm taking some shortcuts. Right now, I just include the third party. I think I have a custom service, but I inject the service. I would much rather have this done by NgRx, I think, where I can just dispatch a toast.
Yeah.
What is your suggestion? A state called UI state for these kind of things? Because I don't think like toasts don't really see them as states. It's more like an action you trigger and an effect that you run off based with that action.
Yeah, it doesn't even have any state yet.
But so still, I'd call it UI state.
It's just basically, it's not even a state. It's basically just an effect. The fact that listening for actions, you can call it toast effects, and you have a few actions display successful toast, and then you pass the message into it, or to display the error toast. And some toasts could have some other additional actions like buttons and stuff like that, maybe. But it depends if you want to overcomplicate it. I'm not going to say overcomplicate it. Would you need it or not? It basically depends.
At this moment in the app, I'm using error states, so green and a red box. That's the thing, and they have a title and a message.
If you don't foresee any buttons and toasts, which probably you shouldn't, right?
No.
There are sometimes actionable items in the snack bars, right? But it depends if you want to use snack bars for some things, toast for other things.
If I get to the point where I want to do like smart undos and stuff, I'll probably get back to you and invite you another time again for that. But
for now, it's just a simple effect that listens for a particular action, and you can.
Okay, and then if we look at and then look at implementing this, it would be very similar, but I wouldn't even bother with injecting the store module for feature because I'm not keeping any state. So
you can add it into the for root because you have somewhere FX module for root. But again, if you want to lazy load this one as well, you can just put it for feature that's eagerly loaded right after.
I think so. These two, the for roots, I have because we have two apps. These are just empty things. But yeah, I can totally see having a shared UI library where I do this thing.
I mean, it doesn't need to be a shared UI library. You can have an effect and provide it in both of those for roots.
Right.
Effect class,
So
the only thing.
Yep. Go ahead. The only thing.
The only thing is just to make sure that, including that effect doesn't drag the entire unnecessary code into that library or that thing. Yeah. So basically, that you can still separate it somehow, that shared thing.
Yeah. I think that will be in this app. It will mostly be dictated by how the NX repo is structured. Basically, the episodes I did with Lars, I'm pretty much following literally what he advised me there, or at least I hope. I think he should do a review. I should hire him to do a review once, but that's another story. Cool. So yeah, in this case, UI module would be just effects, and we'll end up with UI effects and UI actions. And this is where I do like show success toast, show error toast, something like that. Awesome. Okay, cool. I think this is these were one of the biggest things last week that I was like, okay, I really have to ask Alex on how, if I'm on the right track here. So what I could also consider is actually here add a role property and say, okay, you know what, for this specific one you need role admin, and then when I iterate over them, I basically check if you comply this this thing, and it will then match.
Or it could be a roles array or something like that. But typically it would be like permissions array. Yeah.
So yeah, with the role, because it's either user admin.
So this is where it becomes interesting, because if it was a permission based, you can just say permission this, right? So you need to include a single permission, and then your roles could have multiple of them, and you just verify that's within your permission list from the user. But now role is this particular role, and you have to include multiple roles here if multiple roles can see it. Moreover, if you add yet another role, now you have to find where all those roles are used and added even yet additional roles. So see how it becomes a little bit more complicated with roles.
Yeah, I think we can take a look. It's called community feature. There you go. And it lives in a, where does it live? Look here, community feature. It lives in web, I'm fairly sure. I was about to show where you have feature dot. So sample data set. I think this is it. Yes, I do a similar thing, because the thing is, if we look back here in the front end of the app and we go into one of the, is this now? It's refreshing. If we go into one of the communities, we see that there's two reasons to show or hide a thing, a menu item. One is your role, but the other one is that not every community has all the things. So probably the first selection will be, okay, but this community doesn't even have requests and questions. It just has the missions. So don't bother rendering it. We don't even need to check your user permissions if you have it. So there's going to be an interesting, probably some sort of matrix or a two-level check, if you will.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to render it anyway, because it will not work. If you as a user don't have it anyway. Awesome. Yeah. This is definitely interesting stuff.
Yeah, so for that stuff, sometimes we even basically get the permission deeper into the template, saying component allow permissions this, and the action that what to do when you don't have a permission, for example, disable or delete altogether, right? Like that kind of stuff is also possible.
I've been looking at using a feature toggle or feature flag library as well, additionally, because it's something at some point I'd love to have feature flags where I can say, oh, I know Alex, I trust Alex here. You can trust this, you can test this module, or I trust this community with this new module and experiment it. So it kind of adds yet another layer. I'm not going to add it right now. I need to go to production like last week. So I'm busy with that. However, yeah, cool. I really think this is a nice thing. I think we have covered a lot of things. There's probably two things I'd like to have your opinion on. Well, there's a ton of things I'd like to have an opinion on, but this with regards to store and how to do this. The logged in guards. I think before the show, when we did our pre-show session last week, we went over this one and we looked at it. It's a pretty standard issue. Is logged in guard. So I don't want to render any of this stuff if you're not logged in. I think most production apps have a very similar pattern. This doesn't have anything to do with your roles or whatever. This is just if you're not logged in, redirect to the login screen. And I had this implemented using my, using the situation where my logged in state was basically being stored in the store. And what I did there in the NgRx store, I would persist the store to local storage and rehydrate it on boot. And there's a library for this, and this worked. It was nice, but I got comments, and I kind of agree. Like, there's probably a better way to do this. If we don't have to store this stuff, I now have cookie-based auth, so any call to the backend will basically, if it fails, I'm not authenticated. If it comes back with a 401, I'm not authenticated. So these are kind of nice things to have there, which don't make me have to do this store rehydration, which I think is better if we don't have to do it. Then I went to the logged in guard, and this had me puzzled for a little bit because so the can activate guard right now. Well, this is also here. It doesn't really show, but the issue I had was when this guard gets executed, basically when can activate is triggered. What I want to do, I actually want to call out to the API, try to fetch my user info. If I don't get it because of a 401 error, redirect to login. If I do get it, you can log in. And what I did was, again, look at the examples in the NgRx store, and Brandon had I think it was Brandon, but it might be he the last one editing it. I saw his name on the top of the commit. He had something where wait for loading books. And I was like, oh, but this is exactly what I want. Wait for loading books. And then you can look at like, hey, the book that I'm actually trying to look at, is it there? I think this is the guard example that's in the NgRx example repo.
Yeah, it could be.
Yep. So I ended up with this. Wait for me to load. And me is the endpoint that I call, right? It's not me as a person, but me. Wait for the me endpoint to load. Switch map it to the is logged in method. Now the is logged in method does a this.store.select and get is logged in property. And the wait for me to load, what it does is it returns, it gets the is loading property. If it's not loading already, it will dispatch a call to the me action. So what this doesn't have, and this is something I realized also on our last call, I got rid of the whole redirect to login. So this is probably now broken. And if you're not logged in, you're probably going to sit on a blank screen. So before going to production, I need to address this. What would do you have any comments? Do you have any takes on how to approach this? Any best practice?
So what I feel like this one is trying to analyze two Booleans. Basically, is it loading? Am I logged in? Right.
Yeah.
So instead of basically having the state in the two Booleans, maybe it could be done through just like enum, right? For example, logged in state enum, and one could be init, nothing happened, nothing needs to be done, or logged in, or the other one will be what, logged in error or loading, something like that. Like, and then basically you can select and can activate, can look into, it can filter the init one and loading one and just look at the logged in or not logged in one of those as well, right? So that way you will always dispatch an action anyway before you start, something like this, yeah. And then within the effect, you can figure it out because you can see what the current state is, right? You can do what latest from current state, whatever the current state is. And if the current state is already loading, or you can also do the exhaust map kind of thing as well, right? It's basically, hey, I'm already working on this, drop any further me request as well. But then within it, it can look, am I already fetching this data, right? Am I already verifying if the person is logged in or not, like that kind of thing, or am I logging them in or something like that, and then set the state accordingly. So dispatch the action that would set the correct state in that, like that's one of the options as well. And I think that will make this guard a little bit simpler, so there'll be less of those filters and takes.
Yeah,
although
probably...
you would still need one of the takes, right? Because you'll switch map into that state and you need to complete that observable, if I remember correctly.
I think in general, because as you already suggested, yes, you're going to have a dispatch, and we want to have at some point decide if this dispatch yielded to a yes or a no, or logged in state or no. I think that's so it's a two-step thing in any case.
Yeah, so then can activate, the first line there could be, instead of waiting for me to load, it can just dispatch it regardless. Loading, no loading, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And then within the effect, this is where you decide. It's like, okay, I have this me coming into me, many of them, right? And obviously you don't care about the consequent ones if you're already working on one, right? So you can easily put that exhaust map there, right? So that would filter everything out. Like here, you're filtering them in here, but within the effect, you can actually control it. Because right now you're trying to basically do this in the sort of imperative way. It's still not imperative, but it's semi-imperative. And then there you can do that with latest from is loading, right? Is it loading or not, right? If it's loading, just let it go, let it be, and drop even that request. If it's not loading, start the loading, right? Pretty much it.
Basically move the heavy lifting to the effects.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would do.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And if I recall correctly, I added this loading state specifically for this guard, because I was moving away from my token-based and my proven old solution that just works, because if I load the page, state is there, I know I'm logged in, and it just works, life is good. I now need to do another step, an API call, async call, and this kind of makes it more complicated. And I added this is loading state, and this for me already is like smelly. If you have to like add stuff to the state to keep track of something, and so cool. I'm gonna move this over to the state. I'm not gonna do it live. I'm not that fast on camera, but yeah, this is the currently the me that I have. So I'm gonna rework this and
see this fetch thing. It would be probably behind the exhaust map already.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that will be, they'll take away one filter out. And so you're already using the effect anyway. It's just right now you basically split this thing in two ways, right?
And no, I totally hear that. And this also, it doesn't do the logged in part. I think it has too much responsibility on actually like knowledge of the whole ordeal. It would be ideal if I could say, hey, I want to do this check and give me back whatever the result is. And based on that, decide here, have some logic says, okay, actually, I'm going to route you to the login thing, and I'm going to prefix the URL where you want it to go to. So when you're logged in, you'll be hitting the right page in the app, right? So this is kind of, I think this is the logic that needs to live in your guard, and not the is loading and the takes and the filters. But I think with this, go ahead.
And one thing, I mean, if you made it work like this and it kind of works and you understand the code and it kind of makes sense to you as well, I mean, you can leave it as well, right? I would probably, and again, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. I would probably make it a little bit lighter here and push a little bit more to the effect, just because, when I come to this effect, to this card, 3 months later, I would want to see what it does very, very specifically. And right now, and again, it's good. It's broken into these functions that return these observables. They're named very well. Wait for me to load, and log is logged in. So maybe it's self-explanatory. Maybe you'll get it right away. Maybe the new team member that you're onboarding will get it right away as well. But the simpler you can get this one to look and offload into the effect, I think the better.
Right, and I mean, trust me, I've written way worse code than this. So I'm also not. And at this point in the app, as I said various times, I'm rushing to get this app out. This is probably something nice to fix at some point once we're live, once people are using the stuff, refactor it, restructure it. Also, having the router being driven by the global store, basically, if I say it correctly this way, use the global NgRx router store. Actually, I might do this routing to login. I probably do it in the effect as well, if I resonate with what you said in this series. And so this is definitely something I'm going to look at. I think we're almost ready to wrap up. Guate Dev, which I think is Guatemala Dev. Yep, installing component store right now. So yeah, people getting interested. Is there any public repo for this app? Or are there any real app examples available where component store is used? This is what's in the ... So sadly, at this point, this app is not open source. I hope to make it open source at some point. But yeah, again, I got bigger fish to fry. I just don't want to drop the blob of code there. I want to make sure it's properly tested. I want to make sure it has documentation. And frankly, I want to be able to respond to any requests that people have, like, hey, want to look at it, there's something broken. So hopefully by the end of this year, I will make ConnectMind open source, and it's probably an interesting app. NX monorepo, Prisma on the backend, Nest.js, and 2 admin apps. There's a lot of code being generated, so a lot of things that you don't have to worry about. I'm playing with the idea of generating some component stores. So I got this generate process in my app already, and I can easily add more TypeScript code to being generated. So this is something I'm definitely going to explore. Like, hey, what would it look like if I would generate a common component store that doesn't have a lot of functionality, but at least is like, okay, this is a component store for users, and you probably want to have a load user, create user, delete user, update user on this. So it's something I played with in my mind. I don't have any real examples. Do you know of any real examples, Alex, that are out there?
So one of the examples, and again, I don't know how we would call it real examples. So there's an NgRx IO site which has the component store in there, and it has usage page as well. So unfortunately, it's still not filled out correctly all the way to all the 4 use cases that are really, really great highlight of the component store. One of them is filled up though for the local UI state. And example 2 there, the service extending component store. It's a paginator example, and you can. Yeah. I think this is a very good example where it shows how you can encapsulate the local state within the service that's basically attached there. Yeah. So here in the usage, the last one there. Yeah. And now on the right, if you click on the example 2, on the right bar, there's the right bars. Yeah, you can click the use example 2 in there.
Example 2.
Exactly. So, and here is like it says the call out says live example. You're right there. Yes, live example. So, providing component store. So this will be the second one, I think. Yes, yeah, this one. Yeah, with the paginator store service. Yeah. So it will generate you a stack blitz that actually has the live example, and the code that you actually see in these examples is basically taking there. It's a pretty cool thing. So this one, yeah, the next one here, yeah. So this one has a paginator store. Here you go. Yeah, this is your store basically, and then you have a paginator component TS that uses it. And one thing, if you can get quickly to the component itself, like the store is cool, but then component. And close the rest of them.
Yeah.
You can see it has 4 inputs.
Sorry, I'm messing around. It's slowish here, but here we go.
Yeah, you see 4 inputs that are being passed to the paginator store. You have a VM. So 4 inputs. You have the VM you have a page that's basically an output. All right, so we have output generated from the component store. Then you have a VM that's generated, and you have method calls. That's it. They're passing stuff to the. So that's it. So your component store is your component becomes super simple, right? And all the logic is in there.
And I love this. And actually, so for me, I'm not sure if it's a hard rule or a soft rule. In my head, if your component has output input, it's probably a presentational component. You render it in something that gets routed. You won't route to a page that has input output. You probably won't call out to an API in a page that has input output. You probably do that in an encapsulating component. I love it that in this, let's say I can't call this dumb component anymore because this thing is like smartish, and I love it. I love it for that.
It's still presentational. This one is 100% presentational. It just has all the business logic in the store that's accompanying it.
I agree totally on presentational, but I wouldn't call it dumb. This thing is super smart. I love it. I love it. And frankly, I think you were on ZLS, who also where I blatantly copied the name from Zach's live stream, Zach DeRose. I think you were on his stream where you explained, where you walked him through the component store, and you used this example.
Yeah, I think it was this one. Oh, Brendan's as well. I think I won both of them.
I think I was looking at ZLS, and I was looking at you looking at this, and I know from back in February you mentioned I'm working on this component store and I'm doing this, it's coming in there and you have to wait. And I was like, okay. When I saw this, it really clicked, and I was like, okay, this is one of the most beautiful things of a reactive way to do this, where you just this component, it just does the right thing based on the state of this all, super cleanly isolated. And I want to hugely compliment you and your teammates at the Firebase team for building this. It also, Guatedev also mentioned this. I'm going to show their comment here. Please do it. Special thanks to Alex for all the contributions and work with NgRx, and also to Bman for sharing. I'm super happy to share. For me, it's a huge opportunity to learn awesome stuff and to talk with awesome contributors. I also want to thank you, Alex, and Brandon and Mike and Wes, and I hope I don't forget any core team members. Well, there's a ton of people that contribute to it. Tim the Schrijver, yes. Yeah. Also, totally. You're all doing an awesome job, and I think you're making life of a lot of devs a lot easier. I mean, initially it might be a bit more complicated, but definitely better code and more reusable stuff. So yeah, thanks a lot. At some point, probably not next week because I really need to finish this stuff. At some point, when I get a bit further in the app, I'd love to invite you and look at how to implement routing in the store, because routing for me has always been, I love router. I love the Angular router. And it's always been like, yeah, it's a bit, can get complex. I think it's a very common pattern. Ask stuff from the router, but also do the actual routing. I've never done the actual routing from a store or from an effect, better said. So yeah, I would love to have you on at some other point. And for now, thank you so much, Alex, for being here. You have anything you want to share? You want to plug? Any other new cool stuff you're working on?
So next week is a busy week for me. I have like 3 conferences that I'm part of: NgConf, NG Poland, and Dev Days in Sri Lanka. I also have my workshop at as part of the NG Poland. So that'll be a full day workshop for NgRx. It'll be mostly the global store, but I'll definitely be touching on the component store as well, and going all over other things there as well. So it'll be online. By the way, it's one of the first one that I do online.
Is it the similar workshop we did in February?
Yeah, it'll be similar to what we did in February. It'll be a little bit extended with the component store things. When is NgRx 11? Soon. So we just had the Angular 11 release. We're wrapping some of the things up in the 11. We'll see if we can get like periodic tuple types there as well, because I really like it, because it will be on 4.0 now. We'll see if we can do that as well.
That's based on TypeScript 4.1, right?
4.0. So for edit types, I think they got
There
it
is?
4.0. 4.1
Okay.
got this magic string things.
Yeah. Is that gonna enhance how we can use NgRx?
So 4.1 is not landed in Angular 11.
Right.
It would be in the next minor version probably. So NgRx has to go with exactly the same what Angular does. We really like this, versioning that we can also attach to and say, hey, you're using an Angular 11, you can use NgRx 11, and they're 100% compatible. So we like that, and we like this improvement as well. So once they release, we basically follow, and we release within a month or so our own library as well. So it's coming soon. So, and it's not a surprise. It's not some.
Well, I think this is one of the strong parts of the Angular ecosystem, like having these versions. There's a lot of libraries where you're like, hey, if you're on version 8, install this version. It's even better if their versions are equal. I really appreciate it. Also, it's generally small steps. Each half year, small steps, small improvements. If there's breaking changes, they're relatively easy to fix. I think this time we don't really have any huge ones. But yeah, looking forward to that as well. So yeah, in the future, in probably in a few weeks or few months, I'd hope to have you on again, Alex. Thank you so much for being here. And for that, a wrap for today. Thank you everybody for checking out. Catch you all later.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for having me.